Hey everyone, we are here in Pocatello, Idaho at the Bright Tomorrow CAC with Curtis, our second male that we've met on the entire trip at a CAC, so we're happy about that. And we're going to ask Curtis a few questions about some work that he used to do in the prison system with female prisoners. As we all know, child sexual abuse is the cause for a number of societal problems: teen pregnancy, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, suicide, depression, job loss, prison sentences. The list goes on and on. So, Curtis, tell us what you used to do in the prison system.
Well, one of the main reasons I got interested in working with kids in the sexual abuse area is because when I worked in the prison, I worked as a clinician, and one of the things that we found is that about 90% of the women that we worked with were victims of child sexual abuse. And when we looked at their cases in longitudinal perspective and looked at their trends, what we found is sexual abuse almost always preceded the criminal behavior such as alcohol and drug addiction, acting out, sexual promiscuity, all those kinds of things sexual abuse always preceded those acts, which was significant. And what we did in the prison system is actually started, instead of just focusing on the addiction or the crime, we started providing treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder, kind of like what we do with the kids in the center with trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. And what we found is we could actually reduce those criminal thoughts and those criminal behaviors.
Really?
By focusing on the trauma that the women experienced when they were young.
How about that? Well, that kind of leads me to my next question, I guess. We talk a lot about prevention, but one of the things that Darkness to Light also really focuses on is reacting responsibly to child sexual abuse. Knowing what to do when your child comes to you and says, I was sexually abused. As a teacher, parent, coach, anyone really. And it sounds like what you were doing in the prison system was reacting responsibly years after to the sexual abuse. So what happens? Can you tell us why it's important to know how to react when your child comes to you and discloses?
Well, I think the importance of reacting, especially when the child first discloses, is that, from a research perspective and from a qualitative perspective that we've seen in our CACs, is that if we listen, to a child, if we react responsibly, we listen, we believe them, we treat them with the love and care that they're supposed to receive, we reduce those effects of child sexual abuse by 80 to 90%.
80 to 90%.
And then if we act even more responsibly by making sure that those symptoms are followed up with a professional, that they receive the counseling services and the continued support from the family, we reduce those effects by almost 95%. And we reduce the chance of a child having to go through the life difficulties normally associated with child sexual abuse. And so it's just vital, if we're going to slow this trend, that parents and adults act responsibly, and that child has at least one significant adult that sits there and goes, I'm listening to you and I'm going to help you.
And some of the statistics are pretty shocking. I can't name it off the top of my head, but the incidents that a child discloses sexual abuse and then it's not a true case of sexual abuse. Do you know the number? I think it's...
I'm not sure what the number is. One of the philosophies that I think we always go by, though, is when a child is brought to a CAC or to any place and it's not a true case of sexual abuse, there has to be something there that brought forward that false allegation. And that's what we should be looking at. We shouldn't be seeing, well, is it true sexual abuse or is it not? From that point, as responsible adults, we should be looking at, why did that child make a false statement? It does occur. And there's always incidences where, is it sexual abuse or crossing a line? There's always those teeter points. But, with a child, even with the false disclosures, that child is at high risk of being sexually abused. So it's always responsible that even if it is a false report or it's not, sexual abuse, that we still listen to that child and try and figure out what led them to this point in their life.
Right. I think a lot of parents and coaches, teachers out there that may be hearing this interview want to know some really quick, simple things. What does reacting responsibly mean, and what is not reacting responsibly?
Reacting responsibly is, one, listening.
Listening.
That is the most important thing. Two, not overreacting, both with anger, but also with sympathy. I mean, it's important that that child know that you're there to listen to them, and it's also important that that adult takes responsibility for that child and says, you know what, I am the adult in this situation, and something obviously has happened to you. So it is an adult's responsibility to now take it to the next step, whether that's reporting to law enforcement or to the local social services. It's really, it's important for us as an adult to then take that responsibility off the child and take that burden off the child. That, to me, is acting responsibly.